Welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. It is a beautiful Sunday evening here in Atlanta. We want to say hello, everyone. If you are in Australia, I think in Philippines, any part of the world in Monrovia, we say welcome to Focus on Liberia. Right now, it should be after 10 p.m. in Duco. Welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is part two of our series on agriculture. Last week, we discussed an overview of agriculture. We talked about the climate and its impact. We talk about agricultural sector and its impact on the economy. We talk about moving from subsistence to sustenance. Today, we're going to be talking about the Liberian soil. The Liberian soil. Yes, you heard me right. The soil that produces the greens. The Liberian soil. Is it fertile? What is it? How does it look like? Can we grow what? My guest is Dr. Wokley S. Pei. Dr. Pei is a big man when it comes to agriculture. He eats, drink, and sleep agriculture. He has his PhD in agriculture, his master's in agriculture, undergraduate in agriculture. So everything about him is agriculture. He himself made farms in the Firestone area with his father. He worked in Liberia. He did soil testing. He soil management, even right here in the US. He's still in this agriculture business. Dr. Pei, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ja, and thank you to the entire team of Focus on Liberia for having me here today again to share the little thing I know about soil in general and about the soil in Liberia. So today we are going to be answering some of the big questions surrounding the Liberian soil. And I look forward to all the questions from you and from our listener in the diaspora. Thank you.
And some of the questions we'll be addressing tonight is, first of all, is the soil fertile? I know Bishop Mawia told me about the famous place in Kankalantan, Bon County. He said the soil there, when you put your finger in the soil, your finger will germinate. So is the soil fertile? Is there a need for soil testing in Liberia? Should we test the soil? Do we know what it is? Or what are some of the inputs that we need, the fertilizers and other things that we need for proper nutrient for us to grow something? What are the soil types? The types of soil. I mean, I never knew. I look at the ground and say everything the same. But no, Dr. Pei said we have different types of soil. Yeah. And what crops will grow best in Liberia? What are some of the crops that will grow best? Is it rubber? Is it rice? Is it potato greens? Is it beans? Is it bitter root or pound cabbages? We will find out. The need to specialize, crop production. What is it that we know best to produce so that we can produce that one and trade our surplus with other nations and get what we want? What's about vegetables? I heard in Liberia we can grow onion, we can grow cabbage, we can grow this, we can grow that. Is it true? Can we produce enough to feed ourselves and, if possible, sell to our neighbors? We'll answer all those questions in the series tonight. But Mr. Dr. Pei, before we start, just give me two or three sentences of what we discussed last week so that our people will get to know what was discussed, and then we can begin tonight. Let's start with just a brief overview of last week.
Okay, so last week, basically what we discussed was the entire agricultural situation in Liberia. We discussed the climate and what impact it has on the Liberian agriculture sector. We also discussed, mechanized farming in Liberia. We all want to do mechanized farming. We all want to move to sustainable agriculture. But what are those things that we have in Liberia that can make us that enable us to be able to do mechanized farming? So we give an overview of those. We said we have a climate, we have enough water, we have the land resources there, we have technicians. And then we talk about some of the things that we don't have. We don't have roads, we don't have energy or electricity, and we don't have machines. So those are some of the things we'll talk about. And then we'll talk about how agriculture contribute to the economy of Liberia. Agriculture provides a lot of jobs for the people who are working in Liberia. 70% of the working people in Liberia are working in agriculture or agriculture-related jobs. And we talk about how much money agriculture contribute to the Liberian economy. We talk about that agriculture provide about 38.8% of Liberia GDP, and that was that number come from the UN report on Liberia in 2018. That's a very recent year. So agriculture remains a very significant sector in Liberia, but there are a lot of challenges that the agriculture sector is facing, and that's the reason why we cannot realize the full potential of the agriculture sectors. And we will say a lot of stuff about how we can go about to make the necessary investment that we can get the full benefit of agriculture in Liberia. So basically, that's just a short overview of what we discussed.
Thank you so much, Dr. P. And we cannot talk agriculture without talking about the soil, the one on which everything grows, including the animals.
Exactly.
Everything has to do with the soil. So tonight, our topic, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not done so already, please share the show, invite someone. I want to repeat from last week, we always hear about agriculture. And I misquoted last week. It was the former president of Nigeria, Yakubu Gowon, who said, when agriculture goes wrong, everything goes wrong. So when agriculture goes wrong in Liberia, everything goes wrong. Every politician wants to prioritize agriculture. Everybody knows the importance of agriculture. Every advocate, social advocate, every advocate talk about agriculture. But most of the time it's being lip service. We really don't know the nitty gritty. We don't know the details. We don't know what we have, what we don't have. We don't know what is required. So we want to use this session to really, really educate people on what this is all about. And so one important thing we're going to be discussing tonight is the soil. So to start this, I will turn it over to Dr. Pei, who's going to give you just a short presentation, just so that I won't interrupt you, because I myself, I want to learn this. So we're going to have a slideshow. We want our folks in the back room, please get it all set. Dr. Pei, back to you to discuss soil, the Liberian soil.
So thank you very much once again, and welcome to everybody who are watching the show from the US, from Liberia, from Canada, from all over the world. You are welcome. Today we will be talking about the Liberian soil, and we're going to be answering all the big questions out there about surrounding the Liberian soil. But before we do that, we first of all have to know what we first of all need to know what are we talking about? Soil. What is soil? Is it just what we see around us? Soil has so many different definitions from different background for different careers. So if you ask an engineer what a soil is, he's going to give you a different definition based on what he uses the soil for. If you ask a geologist what a soil is, he's going to define the soil from a mineral perspective. If you ask a housewife what a soil is, they're going to tell you it's dirt, because the children bring it in the house and dirty the house everywhere, and you have to clean it. So it's dirt. But for us in agronomy or agriculture, to us the soil is not dirt. To us the soil is not an overburdened material. To us the soil is the most important resource that we have when we talk about agriculture production and agriculture productivity. So what is the soil? According to the American Society of Agronomists definition of soil in 1995, and the American Society of Agronomists is a group of professionals, agricultural scientists in the United States, and they have affiliate members from all around the world. So all these big scientists came together because it was difficult to find a definition of a soil, because everybody had different things to say about soil. So these people tried to define soil to encompass all of what we use soil for when it comes to agriculture. So they came up with that definition. They said the soil was a complex mixture of minerals, organic compound, and living organisms that interact continuously in response to natural and imposed biological, chemical, and physical forces. So the soil has all these things in it. It has minerals in it. It has organic compound. It has living organism, earthworms, bacteria, even big animals like opossum in Liberia and all that kind of stuff. They live in the soil, and all these things interact together on a biological, chemical, and physical forces. So what is the soil? What does the soil comprise of? the soil has four major components. The soil consists of minerals, as you heard in the definition. It has minerals in it. Some of the minerals are useful for plant growth. In fact, when we study soil fertility or soil chemistry, for agricultural purposes, we are actually studying the soil in relation to these minerals. What type of minerals are there? How much is there that can sustain good crop growth? So the soil contains 45% minerals. It also contains air. If there's no soil, if there's no air in the soil, the living organism, the bacteria, the fungi, and the earthworm, they need air to breathe, they need air to survive. So 25% of what we see as soil is air. It also contains 25% water. So we all know that water is in the soil everywhere except in the desert. And even in the desert, if you really dig deep enough, you'll still be able to find water. So the soil also consists of 25% water, and then it has what we call 5% organic matter. And those include living organisms, plant roots, or decayed material or that we call humus, and every other thing that we put in the soil that are organic based. So those are the various components of the soil. So knowing what soil is and knowing what the soil is made of, what then is soil fertility? Because in Liberia, we say the soil is fertile. Our soil is fertile. What does that mean? If you are telling me that Liberian soil is fertile, what is it that you are telling me? Do you know what you're talking about? Soil fertility is the ability of the soil to provide essential nutrients to optimize crop yield. And I want people to pay attention to the word optimize crop yield. I didn't say growth, because sometimes people confuse growth with yield. Those are two different things. And those are some of the reasons why people usually say, oh, look, in Liberia, everywhere is green. You plant something, it's all green. So that means the soil is fertile. So are you basing your soil fertility just based on what you are looking at? Or we also look at, for us soil fertility people, we'll look at it from yield perspective. So, so when you say the soil is fertile, there are things that you must show me to indicate that, yes, indeed, this soil is fertile. There are things that I look for as a soil scientist when you tell me that this soil is fertile. And what are those things? Number one, I'll be looking at the nutrient content of that soil. And I will come to what nutrient I'm talking about in the next slide. But we are talking about how much plant available nutrients are there in that soil. We are looking at the pH, because those nutrients, they are elements. They are elements that exist in nature. And then when they are in the soil, as you heard in the definition of soil, chemical processes also go on in the soil. And then those chemical processes are pH dependent. So what is the pH of this soil? Because the pH will determine if the nutrients that are in this soil, they are available. Because sometimes a soil can contain good amount of plant nutrient, but are these nutrients available? You know, because if the nutrient is there and it's not available for the plant to take it, that soil still has a problem. So the pH is one important chemical property of the soil that determines that. And then we'll also look at how much organic matter is there, because organic matter is very essential for when it comes to soil fertility. Because what organic matter does is that, number one, it holds the soil particles together. I'm going to try to be as simple as possible, because not everybody who is listening to the program is a technical person. So right. Organic matter, organic matter.
Before organic matter, pH. Yeah. What is that? Then organic matter, when it comes to me, I think that anything that is rotten, that organic matter. But let's talk pH first before we go to organic matter. What do you mean?
So what is pH? pH is a measure of the amount of hydrogen ions in a chemical reaction or chemical entity. So for the soil, we'll be looking at how much hydrogen ions are on the soil exchange site. So the way they calculate that in chemistry is the negative log of the hydrogen ion concentration in the solution or in whatever thing you're trying to measure. So that basically that's what pH is the amount of hydrogen ion that is present in the substance. Okay. So on the pH scale range from 0 to 14. So from 0 to 7, anything from 0 to 7 is considered acidic, and anything from 7 to 14 is considered basic or alkaline. So when we measure soil pH, we are trying to measure how acidic or alkaline the soil is.
And
so that's
water, and water pH is 7. That's why we can drink it. That's all I know.
Yeah, pH. Yeah, drinking water, you should try for your drinking water to be around neutral. So a pH 7 is considered neutral.
Okay, no acid, no base in it.
Yeah, it's not acidic, it's not basic. So if you have a pH of 7, that means that particular entity, whether it's a water or chemical or soil, is a neutral substance. But then when you go lower to the left-hand side, which means from 7 going down, the lower you go down, the more acidic it is. And then from 7 up, the higher you go up, the more basic or alkaline that material or that substance is.
So for soil too, does that work the same way?
It works exactly the same way. pH is good. pH. Yeah, pH is pH in anything. So the soil pH, it ranges from the same pH range, even though you're not going to find, soil that there are soil that are very acidic that you can have pH as low as 3.8, or 4 point something. But most soil have a pH ranging anywhere from 4.5 going up all the way to 8 or 9, depending on where that soil is formed or depending on what management practices that soil is under. So that's what pH is.
And what's the optimum? Where should it be for us to?
Yeah, it's in the next. It's in the following slide. So when we get there, I know you know this thing. You want to keep the bus going, but yeah, let's take it step by step. It's down, and then we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah.
So the next thing, yeah.
You are on the organic something.
Yeah. So organic matter. So what is that? Organic matter basically is the decomposed remain of plants and animals within the soil. That's what organic matter is. Organic, anything organic, it means it was living before. Now it's no longer living. It could either be in the process of decaying, or it have already decayed beyond, recognition, and it's in the soil. And those organic matter, they are very chemically active. They are very important in the soil. So some of the things they do for the soil, number one, they hold the soil particles together, so they improve soil structure. They help to regulate soil temperature, and they provide food. They serve as source of carbon for soil microorganisms, because there are billions and billions of microorganisms living in the soil, and those organisms, they need source of food, mainly carbon, to feed on. So organic matter provide carbon, to feed those microorganisms. And then because most organic matter is mostly negatively charged when it comes to their chemical property, they are negatively charged. So they improve the soil cation exchange capacity. And what is that? What is cation exchange capacity? So basically, it's the ability of the soil to withhold cations or positively charged ions in the soil. And as you will see as we go along, most of the minerals or nutrients that we are talking about for plant growth, they are positive ions. And we will need surfaces in the soil for these material to attach, so that the plant can be able to access them through their root. So the organic matter improve cation exchange capacity. And then another thing we'll look at, I already talked about cation exchange capacity when we talk about soil fertility. Another indication we'll look at is the base saturation. And what is that? We are looking at the percentage of the cation exchange site in the soil, on the soil colloid, that are occupied by basic cations. And those will include calcium, magnesium, and most of the cations in the soil that we're going to talk about later. So we talk about nutrients or minerals. What are those? Essential plant nutrients. So every plant that you see growing requires nutrient element. They require elements to grow, and those elements are what we call essential nutrient. And there are 17 of them that in the soil that plants require to grow to be able to produce. So the first three, which is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, those form the organic component of the plant. So they are within the plant system. Every plant that you take, every plant material contain carbon, it contain hydrogen, and it contain oxygen. And then after that, there are 14 other elements that plants will need to grow and complete their life cycle or their reproduction process. And those elements include nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, magnesium, iron, boron, manganese, zinc, molybdenum, chlorine, copper, and nickel. Now, those minerals elements are further subdivided into two groups depending on how much it is needed or how much the plant needs. So based on how much the plant needs, we divide it into two groups. We call them the micro, which is those that are required in large amount, and then the macro, which are those that are required in small amount. Now, you will have a problem if you have too much of either group or you have too little of either group. So they have to exist in the soil in certain proportion for them to be beneficial to the plant. For example, the micronutrient, which one micronutrient that we have a serious problem with in Liberian soil that most of the discussion will surround tonight is iron. We have too much iron in the Liberian soil, and that presents a lot of challenges especially for rice production in lowland. Iron toxicity is a big problem in Liberian soil, and we will talk about that in more detail. And then further down, we can also discuss, or we can also further subdivide this element into how they behave in the plant. So when the plant acquire this element from the soil, are they distributed evenly in the entire plant system, or are they centralized or localized somewhere within the plant? So we have those that are mobile in the plant. That is, when the plant take them up, they travel from the root, they go through the stem, they come to the leaf, and then if the plant doesn't have enough of this element, the plant try to move them because plants are smart. Plants are smart just like human beings. They are very smart. If plants grow, if plants are growing in an environment where they have little nutrient, there are ways that they can distribute that nutrient to be able to optimize their production or their life cycle, their reproduction. So for example, nitrogen, when nitrogen is deficient in the soil, if the plant is not getting enough, what the plant will do is whatever nitrogen it has in its system already, it will push those to the younger leaf. The same way we behave as humans. If you don't have enough food, what you do? If you have little food, you let your children eat first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you let the children eat first.
That is when you good parent now.
Yeah. Believe me, plants are way better parents. So,
wow.
Yeah, so they will move this nutrient to their younger organs to be able to sustain them, because the older one, they say you have already enjoyed a little bit, so let's try to support the younger one. So in the plant, mobile element will be what? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, nickel, chlorine, and molybdenum. So those elements, when the soil doesn't have enough, whatever the plant can get from the soil, they will try to push them up. So when we go to the farm or to the field as soil scientists or plant nutritionists, we try to look for what we call hunger sign. The same way, if a nutritionist went to a war zone, for example, they will look for signs of hunger in people who are there. They will look for malnourishment. Are these people underweight? And then first you have to discover, what their physical appearance look like. Then you can go into what causing the problem. So when we go to the field, if you take me to a rice field, corn field, whatever field, and then you have a problem there, I will be looking at it through the lens of a soil scientist or the lens of a plant nutritionist. I'll be looking for hunger sign. And then the hunger sign, depending on what nutrient is limiting, it will appear in different parts of the plant. And that is, we can base that on the behavior of this element in the plant. So for mobile element, their deficiency symptoms will usually appear in the lower organs of the plant, because the plant will push whatever it has, it will push them up to their younger part. And then we have those that are immobile. So those that are immobile will not move in the plant. So if the plant doesn't have enough, whatever it takes, and it sits in the outer leaf or in the outer organs, it remains there. And if there is not enough supply for the plant to be able to supply the younger organs, so the deficiency of that particular element will start to show in the younger leaf. So you will see the older leaf will be doing good, they will be fresh, but then the younger leaf will have several discoloration that we can look out for and say, oh, there's probably a zinc problem, that's probably an iron or a copper problem. So based on that, we can be able to detect and those are just physical exams that we do in the field. And then based on our physical examination, when we take our samples now and bring to the lab, then we can be able to know exactly what tests we need to do to confirm whatever our observation was in the field.
Wow. I didn't know plants were that smart.
Plants are super, super smart. Super smart. And the good thing is they don't talk. And that's why sometimes we plant doctors, we are very proud because we diagnose problem, from living organisms that don't talk. Like if you got sick, you went to the hospital, the doctor will take patient history. If I went to the field, the plant would not tell me anything. I will have to look and see what's going on and be able to solve that problem. But the plants can really speak to you if you know how to listen and what to look for. Yeah.
Plant speaking, because that will only happen in my village where the people go to the medicine man and they
Well, that one, I don't know about it. It's not scientific. I'm not denying it, but it is not scientific. So I don't know about that. But yeah, those things happen. Yeah. Well, okay. So now we talked earlier about the pH, soil pH, and how it affects soil fertility and soil nutrient availability. So we said soil can be basic, acidic, or alkaline, or basic. So what's the optimum pH range? You asked the question earlier. What's the optimum pH range for crop production? Excuse me. Now, for most agricultural soil, for optimal nutrient availability to exist in an agricultural soil, the pH have to range between 6 to 7.5. That's the optimum pH range. And if you look at the slide on your screen there, the one on pH, if you look at the pH between 6.5 and 7.5, what do you see? All the elements that are listed as micronutrients, those that the plant requires in large amounts, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, and magnesium, they are mostly available when pH is between 6 and 7.5. When soil pH is in that range, we have maximum availability of this nutrient element. Now, when we start having a pH below 6, we start having an increased availability of the macronutrient, the one that the plant needs in small amount. So those will be iron, manganese, boron, copper, zinc, nickel. We start seeing more availability. So the lower you go, below 5.5, below 5, then we start running into toxicity problem because then your soil will be making too much of this micronutrient available to the plant, and the plant will be taking too much micronutrient that they don't need, and then we run into toxicity problem. And as soil scientists, that's one thing that we try to correct. We can grow food in any soil because we know how to chemically manipulate the soil system to be able to grow. So for us, most of the time, people say this soil is good for this soil is good for that, this soil is good for that. That's true. Naturally, the soil is good for certain plant growth. But as soil scientists, we can take that soil, treat it with what we want it to be, and then we can grow whatever we want it to grow in.
That's a good part.
Yeah, and that's why it takes you 4 to 5 years to get a PhD.
I know.
Because you are trying to work out, something like you're trying to manipulate Mother Nature. Nature made it to exist in a certain way, and then you want to work it out to be your way, to work for you. And it takes a lot of effort to do that. And that's why we have to do research over a long period of time. So in Liberia, one major problem we have, like the last time we discussed when we talked about the climate, is rainfall. We get a lot of rainfall in Liberia. And when the rainfall, what happens? Most of these nutrients that we are talking about that are in the soil, they move in the soil, they move with the soil solution, with the water that is in the soil. So as it rains, this nutrient, they will move down the soil profile.
Yeah.
As you can see on the slide there, rainfall and leaching. So when the rainfall, this nutrient can leach through the soil profile. And in most cases, especially in the tropics, this nutrient will leach below the root zone where the root cannot be able to access them anymore.
Right.
So that's one basic problem, a major problem that we have with soil in the tropics. Liberia is not the only country in the tropics as a whole.
So you're saying when it rains, it pushes the good nutrients that the soil want all the way down until the roots can get to them because they're way deep.
Yeah, they are way deep, and you're going to see that. In fact, let's go to the next slide, and you'll see that, which is my final slide. So in this slide, I'm comparing two different soil. On the left, you have a temperate grassland soil. On the right, you have a tropical soil, what we call laterite soil in Liberia. If you ever studied agriculture in elementary or junior high school in Liberia, they talk about Liberian soil. They say Liberian soil is laterite. But what does that mean? So laterite soil, usually the characteristic you can see in the picture on the right there, it has a very thin upper layer that comprised of organic matter and the minerals that are essential to plant growth. Very thin, usually between 6 to 8 inches in like forest area and things like that. So you have a very thin organic layer. And then right below that organic layer, what do you see? You see a red layer of soil, red in color. What does that mean? What does that show? That red color is because of iron and aluminum oxide in the soil. So you have too much iron, you have too much aluminum in the soil. And then that laterite, which means this particular material, it forms that almost impenetrable barrier that plant roots cannot easily penetrate. As you can see between the two pictures, you see that the root depth in the picture on the right in the tropical soil is very shallow because that red layer you see over there is very tough for the plant root to go through. And then when you go below that layer, you see that when you go below that, you see that yellow layer, and then you see white substances, white spot in those layers. Those white things you are seeing, those are calcium deposits. Calcium that have been washed from up that went down into the profile and settled there, and the plant cannot access that anymore because this red layer here is just too hard or too difficult for the root to penetrate. And this is most of the soil, the upland soil that we have in Liberia. It looks like that. If you travel along the highways where they have cut the earth and built the roads, and then if you look on the wall, you know, when we are traveling in the car, we saw something. When we are looking on the wall of that road, we are just saying, wow. Because that thing exposed the entire profile of the soil, and you can clearly see exactly what the different layers are composed of. Compared to the temperate soil or the temperate grassland soil, you see how loose it is, and you see how deeply the roots are able to penetrate, you know, to get nutrient. And look at the color. It's high in organic matter. You know, it's darker in color compared to the tropical soil, which is red in color. So now let's come to the Liberian soil.
And that soil on the left, where can we find it? Is that Ghana?
No, that's not Ghana. That's soil that you will find in temperate region. Like most of the soil here in America, like you hear about the Great Plains, you hear about the corn belt where the people produce a lot of corn and that kind of stuff. Even down in Louisiana, where people produce a lot of corn, sugarcane, cotton. You know, you will find this kind of soil that are very deep. You know, the profile is deep, the root can penetrate better, they are well drained, and those kind of things. You will find that. But in most of Africa, because most of our land is elevated, so when it rains, that rainwater washes away our organic matter our nutrient element, it washes to the lower land, which we will talk about as we go along. And then most of these land are just, they have what we call minimum fertility. Now, coming to the Liberian soil, people say our soil is fertile. Is it true? Is our soil fertile? Now, I have just shown you all the indicators of soil fertility. When you say soil is fertile, everything that you need to look for. Now, do we have these things in Liberia? Well, I worked with the Liberian soil for a year, as I told you. I did a lot of analysis on the Liberian soil. So I will be informing the audience tonight about some of those work I did. Number one, our soil. Most of the soil are analyzed in Liberia, and I'm telling you soil from Lofa, Bon County, Markibi, Grand Bassa, and Nimba. Soil from the 5 counties, I was analyzing them for a whole year. And most of the soil there have a pH below 5.5. They have a pH below 5.5. So they are very acidic. Our soils are very acidic. Organic matter content, as you saw in the second slide when I showed, soil contain 5% organic matter content. Our soil, most of the soil that are analyzed from the 5 counties were testing between 1.5 to 3% organic matter content, depending on where it came from. So like if people took soil from like the swamp or lowland area where you don't have too much erosion and stuff, it will have a little high organic matter content. It will have a better pH and better nutrient content. But on the highland, the pH is usually below 5.5, and a pH below 5.5, you will have most of the micronutrient the one the plant need in large amount, you will have them deficient. And then you will have more of the macro, the small one. You have more of them, and then you run into toxicity problem. So in Liberia, people talk about the soil is fertile. Basically, what they are talking about there is what is considered the inherent or natural fertility of the soil. Every soil, besides maybe desert sand or soil along the beach, like the sand along the beach, but every soil where a plant is growing, it has something called natural or inherent fertility. That's the reason why a plant is growing there in the first place, because it contains some nutrient. That does not mean that, because you see plant growing there, it doesn't mean that it has all the nutrient in the right amount that's supposed to sustain this plant to grow. Because nobody have planted this particular plant, nobody is taking care of it, and then you just see it growing fresh. You think, oh, the soil is fertile. But if you go and clear that particular soil and plant your crop there, are your crops going to perform the same way as those natural vegetation? That's what people don't look at. And I don't blame them, because they don't have the technical know-how. They don't have the expertise. They don't know what to look for.
Yeah.
They don't know what to look for when they say, oh, the soil is fertile. We'll just go with plant, and then whatever we can get, that is it. Most of the crops we are growing in Liberia, we don't even know the yield potential of the crops. So, and because we're not treating them with any, inputs, whatever we get, we say, oh, the soil is good. We got good yield. But you got good yield relative to what? Compared to what? You don't even know the yield potential of this crop. And the only way we can do that is if we soil scientists and plant breeders come together. If a plant breeder come up with a new variety, now they pass it on to us. We, the soil scientists, take that particular plant, we grow it, we treat it with all the nutrients that we can treat it. And then we say, okay, if you apply all the nutrients in the right amount at the right time for the plant to take it, this plant on 1 acre, if you grow this particular plant, you'll be able to get this ton of yield. That is the yield potential. So if you are growing that, knowing that information, if you are growing that particular plant somewhere and you are not reaching that yield potential, you cannot say your soil is fertile. There's definitely something, considering that you've done all your other agronomic activity well, you have done all your pest management, disease management well, and those issues are not a problem. And then you see that you are not still reaching the yield potential of that crop. There's no way you can tell me that the soil is fertile, and I agree as a soil scientist. So in short, most of the soil in Liberia are not fertile. I'm saying most because most of our soil are upland soil. Now in the lowland, we have some level of good fertility because what? Over the years, as the rainfall, it washes some of these nutrients down to the lowland. like when our rivers get flooded, they come, with nutrient, with organic matter that they wash from upstream, they bring it down. So wherever that floodplain is, you will have a good level of fertility in our region. So those regions you will find, a considerable level of soil fertility there. But in our inland valleys, where most of our rice production is not occurring, even though our people are still doing upland farming, rice farming, that's not profitable. That's not good. You're never going to grow enough rice, on top of the hill. You have to come down on the flat land. You have to go down in the lowland. That's where rice will do well. But even in the lowland, we have challenges also, because this iron that we are talking about here, when iron get wet, when you submerge or you flood the soil, what happens is that iron leave its oxidized state, it becomes reduced. Oxidized means you have flooded it and then oxygen have escaped the system. There's no oxygen. So now it becomes reduced. That's reduction. That's chemistry. I don't want to go into deep soil chemistry, but that's what happens when you flood the soil, it leaves the oxidized state, it becomes reduced. And once it becomes reduced, iron becomes available in large quantity. So in Liberia, we have a lot of problem with iron toxicity in our lowland rice field. So, and that's the reason why our rice don't do well. Now, the way the Ministry of Agriculture through CARI and the farmers in Liberia, the way they are trying to cope with that system is to grow tolerance variety. That is a rice variety that can tolerate, this high amount of iron in the soil. So even though there's too much iron and rice cannot really do well, but those varieties will still try to bring up some good yield that people can have. But the best way to deal with that problem will be to manipulate the soil pH, to increase the pH, because once you increase the pH, then the iron will not be toxic. The level of iron toxicity will go down. I'm trying to make it as simple. There are technical terms that I can use, but like I said, I want everybody to understand what I'm saying.
Please, because you don't want me to get lost in the first place.
Exactly. So
when you say the highland, the lowland, when you say the lowland, are you talking about like any part of the country you will consider that lowland area?
No. When we talk about lowland, those will be like the swamp area.
Okay, where there is no hill.
Yeah.
The down part.
Yeah, the down part, where we're talking about swamp. And most of our swamps, like I said, in Liberia, they are inland valleys. So there will be hill there, there will be hill there, and then you will have the swamp in the middle. It might not be two big hills. It might just be some elevated surfaces, but then you will have a level ground down, usually, where there will be some body of water or some water flowing or setting for a longer part of the year. So those are what I'm talking about. Those are the ones that are conducive for rice production. But growing rice on the highland, where you can't do proper nutrient management, and then when rain falls, it washes every little nutrient that you have there, you're never going to get good yield. So if our farmers in Liberia are listening to me, please leave the hills, plant other crops there, plant your tree crops on the highland, move down to the lowland to be able to grow your rice. Your rice will do better, and you can do, depending on how well you can lay your swamp out, you can do proper nutrient management, because you can control the water. If you lay the place up properly, you can be able to control the water. And if you put fertilizer, you can be able to make sure that fertilizer remain there for the rice to take it up. So people have to stop doing rice farming on the hill.
Right, like Yekepa. If you went to Yekepa, they're making big farms on those hills. And to me, I thought that was good yield, but you're saying no.
No, it's not. What they are getting there is not enough. They will get double that, better yield down in the valley. If you don't have swamp land on your land or wherever you are, you can grow other crops and sell them and buy rice. But growing rice on the highland, you're never going to get enough yield, because number one, you cannot do proper nutrient management in rice cultivation on the hill. You just can't. It's not good. People need to stop doing that and come down in the valleys or in the swamp to grow their rice.
So when you say you grow something else in those highland, something like what?
now there's a lot of cocoa production going on in Liberia. Cocoa is one crop that is in high demand in the world. You know, Ivory Coast is the largest producer of cocoa, followed by Ghana. And those people, they bring in a lot of money. Cocoa production bring a lot of money to their farmers in a year. So you can grow cocoa, you can grow banana, you know, you can grow pineapple, those crops that you can be able to sell. And so, because those crops will do well on the high end, because those crops will not grow in water. You know, rice is designed in a way that it can grow well both in water and on land, but it does best in water as compared to the other cash crop, what we call cash crop in Liberia that people grow. So those are what you need to do when you have that kind of land situation.
You're making me feel sorry for how we work on those high land producing rice.
Yeah, I would tell. I mean, it's sad. Probably, I don't know if people have been able to inform the people, our people about this, and sometimes too, our people they can be informed, but people are resistant to change. You will be surprised even here, where you think the farmers are educated or they have access to information. When you tell them something, they will say, "Hey, my father and my grandfather did this for years, so I think I'm going to keep doing it that way." Except somebody really does it, and then they see the benefit and they tell them. So, you know, our people need to be told that, look, you are spending too much time up this hill, brushing from hill to hill every year. You're not getting enough rice. You can just go down to the swamp, find a good area, and settle there, and you can grow rice in that swamp year after year if you do proper land management, proper soil management there. And you don't have to go brushing and felling trees every year. You know, you don't need to do that. If you go to the swamp, the first year, your first suffering year will be that first year that you go there to clear the place and set it up, you know, lay out the place, everything. And then once you get that going, all you need to do is every year when you finish harvesting the rice, just brush that rice straw and grow new rice. And then during the dry season, you can also be able to grow your vegetables there. In the rainy season, when the water table rises, then you can go back because rice will survive in the water.
Wow. When you were talking about the nutrients and then especially the organic component, okay, that I was thinking of the organic matter. What I learned, and tell me if this is true of us, that like we human beings, when we die, we are buried 6 feet and our body will decompose because
Yeah.
all the food we ate while we're living, we got to give it back to the soil. And they bury us, they bury us 6 feet because the tree root can go 6 feet, right?
Yeah.
Beyond that, it will not get the nutrient.
Yeah.
Then we are robbing the earth of proper nutrient. In Liberia now, they are not burying people, they are putting people, setting them on top of the ground. Would that be something that is robbing the nutrient that we're supposed to put back to the soil? I don't like to see it.
Well, that's a good question, but you know, it have both a social perspective and a scientific perspective. Some people, when they die, you know, that's how they want to be buried, you know. So they get buried that way. But yeah, if somebody dies and they get buried in the soil, they become organic matter because that's what we are. We are organic matter. From the day we are born to the day we die, we are eating plants and animal material, which are organic matter. So our entire body is organic matter. So for example, you know, if somebody passed away and let's say their body left on the surface, like during the war, people who their body were not properly buried. Yeah, I mean it's not. It doesn't sound right to say, but yeah, they became organic matter and they enrich the soil. So and even human waste. Like back home, people go to the bush a lot to do their business, and then all the waste material you are leaving there in the bush. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. Of course, you shouldn't be doing that because it also has serious health implication for you. But yeah, as you go there and put these droppings there, you are definitely returning organic matter to the soil. And in science, we don't use human organic matter for crop production. So yeah, I don't want to talk about what are burying people in tomb or in the ground if it's a good thing. Yeah, there's a serious ethical implication on that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But because when you were talking about the nutrients, I thought about that hey, maybe, and we used to hear during the war, oh, after because bodies were all over the place, so the place became fertile. In fact, some people say we are now finding gold in places that we never used to because of the human beings and all kinds of things. But
No,
that's
no,
not
no, those are not true. Those
okay.
doesn't have any scientific basis.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me
But
read a few comments here.
yeah,
People are, and if you are watching us, you see your survey on there. There's a poll on there. Go ahead and rate the show. This one is from Danny Duo Phillips. What are the dangers, if any, Dr. P, that Liberian soil will become unproductive, like India's, after a certain time of repeated usage? I read a documentary about India's soil and how it became unproductive after 50 years of fertilizers use.
yeah. Okay, so that's a good question. I think Dennis tried to ask this question last week, and then we said we were going to answer it today. Yeah, he's very right. Overuse of fertilizer over a long period of time can definitely degrade the soil or make the soil unproductive. For example, nitrogen-based fertilizer. Nitrogen is one of the main essential nutrient for crop growth. But depending on the source of nitrogen that you are using, if you use it over and over for a long period of time, one bad thing it does is that it reduces the soil pH. And once it reduces the soil pH, then you start running into different problems, from toxicity problem to disease problem, and all of those. And that's the reason why we soil scientists, that's the reason why we study, to be able to solve those problems. Probably the reason why the Indian farmers or the Indian people are having problem with this is that they have been using a nitrogen-based fertilizer for a very long time. And then because they have overused this fertilizer in a year, now their soil is no longer responsive because either they have issue with their pH or they are having toxicity problem, in their soil. So if you use, even though fertilizer is a good thing, it increases our yield, but you also have to use it wisely. And while you're using it, you also have to monitor your soil and take corrective measure to make sure that you don't run into the kind of problem that he's talking about. So number one, he said, what are some corrective measures? It will be monitoring your pH on a regular basis. If you see that your pH is out of range, then you have to adjust the pH. And now when usually when you talk about this, they will say, oh, our farmers are poor, they can't afford lime and all that kind of stuff. Now, farming is not a poor business. If you're going to go into farming, I say if you want to be doing it the way our people are doing it right now and be moving from place to place every year. But if you are going to do a settled form of farming somewhere where you say this piece of land is my property, I'm going to develop it, and I'll be making my farm here, you have to be able to put in all the necessary material in that area to do that. And that's the kind of farming I'm discussing here. So over time, if you are using a particular kind of fertilizer, you have to be monitoring your soil system to see what changes are there. And then there are corrective measures that you can take to make sure that you don't run into problems.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing soil, the Liberian soil. This is part 2 of our series on agriculture in Liberia. My guest is Dr. Wokley Pei. He's a postdoctoral fellow at the Agricultural Science Center that's in New Mexico, the New Mexico State University. There where he is. Doctor, I want to read this because this question keep coming, and we've always answered this kind of question.
Yeah.
And sometimes I want to control my. Sometimes when it comes, I get little. I don't want to say angry because I'm supposed to be this cool guy. Here's a question from John Sonnyboy Dan. All this doctor, you're caring. When you're writing books, in other words, people, by the time you talk, they say, "But have you written books?" I have written books, but they don't buy them. This is a book. But then anytime I interview someone with PhD, have you written your book? What book are you written? So respond to that question about have you written a book and all the book question.
Well, that's a very good question. And on Friday or Thursday when I was in the field working, I was thinking about this program, and then I was thinking, what if somebody asked this question? What about this particular question? So, Mr. Don, to answer your question over there, there are Liberians, like Mr. Jai just said, there are a lot of books written by Liberians. Liberians don't even buy it because a lot of people don't even want to read. That's the first thing. Now, when you talk about writing books, there are stages in writing, and I will talk about myself. I will not talk about the other doctors in Liberia because I don't know what they went through or what they are going through with their own program. But the information that you see in books, especially in scientific books, they come from somewhere. They come from research. And then the writers of the book go and get this research material, and from that they put the material together, and that's what they make book of. Now, what I do is my work provide those material that people write in book. So if you Google me, Wokley SP, I'm on Google. You can find me in Google Scholar. You will see some of my publication. I have not written a book, but I have written scientific paper, peer-reviewed scientific paper that have higher weight than books. Right now, I have a paper under review, and I have one I'm completing to be submitted for publication. That's the kind of work that I do. I do research and publish scientific paper, and from those paper, people who want to write book can go and get those papers, put them together, and use the information. And then if you look in the reference section of those books, some of the books, one day you might find my name because I have quite a good number of papers up there that people are referencing. So that's what I do. So not everybody who get a PhD needs to write book. What we with the PhD do most of the time is we do research and we'll write scientific paper. We put it out there. In our paper, our research address specific question, specific problem. So we solve the problem and we come up and say, hey, there's this problem, we have solved it, and then this is how we went about solving it, and then you can read it. And then if you want, if you have the resources, you can go back and verify what we did. At my level, that's what I do. I do research and write scientific paper. If the time reaches and I think that, okay, I think I should write a book and put my name on it, that's something I can do if I can write a scientific paper, do research from scratch, and write the result, and then they get accepted in international scientific journal where they are being reviewed by other top scientists. I think I can write a book, but I don't think that's the direction of my work. My work is research and write the report out there and go out and solve real problem other than just putting the literature out there. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for that beautiful answer. I wouldn't have even attempted to answer it half the way you did, but that was beautiful. And, because I get the question all the time, and it's a fair question if you ask it properly. Yeah. But if you ask it in a derogatory way, oh, you're the doctor, where are the books? And here is a collection of, I call it the Republic of Liberia foundational documents of our nation, where we took the Constitution, other important documents, the Declaration of Independence, and you can use this to teach civics in Liberian schools. I also co-author a book of fiction. I co-author with my brother. I co-author a collection of folklores for Liberia, and I have a blog where I write most of these political topics. But we don't have people reading.
Exactly.
Okay. In fact, I was at a place where I was selling a book, and the guy, I was selling it $10. The guy couldn't buy the book, but he bought a $20 fish for it. He and the other guys. But anyway, so that's my frustration when they say book. But it's a fair question. One of the questions too I got for you is, we don't know Dr. Pei, so how can you, with this knowledge and expertise and what you do, that more and more people, especially Liberians, know about you? That's the question I got after our first interview.
Well, number one is what I'm doing, accepting this kind of invitation and getting out there for people to know me, because like we just said, not many people read, and most people right now in Liberia, even though they have smartphone, they got computer, they got access to internet, but they got their priorities on things that they go on the internet to look for. So definitely one way for people to know me will be coming on this kind of platform to make myself known by sharing my ideas. And another way somebody can know me is, like I said earlier, just Google me. If you see me on this platform and I'm talking this thing, and you think that, where is this guy coming from? He doesn't even know what he's talking about. Just open your computer, your phone, and then just Google Walkley SP. Or go to Google Scholar and see what contribution I'm making. Or you can go to the American Society of Agronomists website. All the time, the 5 or 6 years I was in graduate school, from my master's through my PhD, every year I went to the meeting of the American Society of Agronomists, and I did my presentation there. I presented my research. I have my abstracts of my project, the abstract of my project, my presentation, recorded presentation. They are there on the ASA website. So if you go to the ASA website, they call it the ASA, which is the American Society of Agronomists. And there are 3 societies. So they have the American Society of Agronomists, the Soil Science Society of America, which I'm a co-member of, and then they have the Crop Science Society of America. So say I'm in the soil science. So you go to the soil science section and you go to the author catalog and you go all the way down to P, you will find Pay Walkley S. And then if you click on that, you should be able to listen to my presentation all the way back from 2014 to now. And then also, if you go on my Facebook page, even though I don't do a lot of Facebook thing, but there are a lot of pictures from my research feed and other research thing I did. So those are ways that you can find me. I'm very visible, on the web. Maybe a lot of people in Liberia don't know me, but if you hear me talking here today and you wanted to find me, you can definitely go find me on the web, right, and you can figure out what I'm doing.
Thank you. And I've just posted your name in the on Facebook so that you can Google that and begin your research to know more about Dr. Pei. Also, while the show is going on, we are asking them to rate our guests, and so far we have let me see, 67% say excellent, 33 say good. So I think we're doing good. And this is one way that you can know. We still have few questions, and we have few comments here. Marka, yes, he said, Dr. Pei, I have been following an agricultural expert who strongly believe that we are to avoid tilling the soil and using fertilizer.
Okay, so so what's the question? Is that an opinion or what?
Is that true? Are we supposed to avoid tilling the soil and using fertilizer in Liberia?
Well, right now there's this movement called conservation agriculture or regenerative agriculture. So a lot of people are saying that tillage destroy the soil, and it does all sort of things to the soil. Some of the things that they say is true. When you till the soil, you cause a lot of disturbance. But you can't just leave the soil like that and you say you will grow your crop. For example, if you don't, our people don't scratch, how do we grow rice? They just broadcast the rice on the surface and leave it. So some form of disturbances have to happen for real productive agriculture to go on. So some of our work we do, like what we tell farmers right now, is to move towards minimum tillage. So what is that? Is instead of tilling every year, you can reduce the frequency of your tillage to reduce that disturbance. Because when you till the soil, you destroy the soil structure, you lose some organic matter, and you also release carbon into the atmosphere. And those are some of the negatives of agriculture. Like all human activity got positive and negative part, but we look at which one outweigh which one. So if the good one outweigh the bad one, definitely we'll take the good one. So yeah, we will have to do some tillage, no matter what. If you want to do,
what are you supposed to do if you don't till the soil?
Well, if you don't till the soil, then you have to grow crops that will require minimum tillage. So like what we do now, what we are doing now is we are telling some of our farmers, look, instead of tilling your soil every year, you till it one time in 5 years. So you till it one time, the remaining of the 4 years, you go and plant cover crop. So what the cover crop will do is that because they have all the root system of this plant that you will grow as cover crop, you have it in the soil. What it does, it reduces the soil compaction. So the root, when you plant your crop, if it's corn, for example, or beans, or sorghum, or whatever crop you want to grow, the root will be able to have better access, to the nutrient in the soil because the soil will not be compacted. But if you don't till your soil for a long time and you are still growing crop there, you will have serious issue with soil compaction, and your crop will not be able to establish properly. And then when it comes to the use of fertilizer, that's why we are putting out recommended rate. The same way you go to hospital, doctor does prescription. They don't just give you medicine, they say take it. You know, they say take one every 2 hours, or take one every day, or take one every week. It's the same thing that we do in soil fertility. When we do nutrient recommendation, we say put 10 pounds per acre or 100 pounds per acre, because we know that is the right amount that you can put to optimize your yield. Normally, farmers all over the world are guilty of it. Farmers have the tendency to put more fertilizer because they think if you put more, you will get more. But that's actually wrong. If you put too much, it might actually start to affect your yield, and it might also start to affect your soil, your different soil properties. So that's why we have recommended it. So we have to use some amount of fertilizer, and we have to do proper tillage management. You can just go be digging the soil everywhere. So that person have a legitimate concern. It's true, but for sustainable crop production to continue, we have to do proper management, and we can just cut it off completely.
Another question from Thomas Abanga. He said, please ask the doctor to tell us the composition of the agro ecosystem in Liberia as it relates to soil iron toxicity for rice production. I know you mentioned that before, but you can...
Yeah, I don't know if he was listening, but I already said that in my presentation that in the lowland we have serious issue with iron toxicity. And that, number one, is because most of our inland valleys are formed between hills and mountains. So, and then these hills have this laterite type of soil that we discussed earlier that is high in iron oxide. So over the year, as it rains, this mineral these minerals wash down into our water system, into the lowland area. And then, during the dry season, if when the water level goes down and you plant other crops, they do very well. You think that everything is fine, but during the rainy season, when the water table rises, that's when we lost that oxidized condition. Oxidized is when the soil is dry, there's enough oxygen in there, so the iron is not toxicity, it's not available in a large quantity for the plant to take. But then during the rainy season, or when you grow rice and you flood your field, then the iron becomes reduced. It leaves that oxidized state, it comes to a reduced state, and then that's when they become available for the plant to take. And then when it rises, especially when it takes too much and it's not tolerant to that particular iron, then you will have a reduced yield. Then you run into iron toxicity problem. So I don't understand exactly what he was talking about, the ecological zone or something.
Right. So how can we say, how can we mitigate that toxicity?
Well, number one is usually during the rainy season, when I was at Cary, for the few times I was there doing my research, I ran into iron toxicity problem. So usually what people would do is they will open, the bunds for the water to leave the field. When the water leaves the field, you have some oxygen, entering the soil because the soil is no longer flooded when you release the water. So you have an oxygen to go into the soil, so the soil becomes oxidized and that iron level goes down. But that is not sustainable for rice production because, let's say, if you have fertilizer, because when you put fertilizer out, the fertilizer will be in the water. So if the iron start to become available and start to hurt the rice, you have to release the water, and then the fertilizer wash out with that water to go. So the only solution will be correcting the pH. That will be expensive because you will need agricultural lime to apply to raise the pH from whatever it is, 4.5, 5.5 to around at least 7, or let's say 6.5, so that that iron level can reduce. Then your rice will be able to grow properly. And then the next one we can do is what I talked about earlier, to grow tolerant variety. Like I know that Soy Cocoa 8, some of the rice variety will have in Liberia, Soy Cocoa 8, LAC 23. I might not be getting this spot on, but I know that some of those varieties are tolerant to iron toxicity in the lowland in Liberia.
Let's go to basically now we're talking. There are more questions, but my question now is So let's discuss what crop grows best in Liberia, and let's run through the list because I have some crops on my mind I want to plant in the Todi area.
Okay, so what crop grow best in Liberia on our type of soil system with soil pH mostly below 5.56 or 5.5. Again, most tropical crop will do okay, until like if you went there, like let's say you tried most of the crop that would do well would be like sugarcane especially. And the reason I emphasize sugarcane is because sugarcane will provide a lot of job and it will bring a lot of money when you grow sugarcane. And it requires very minimum maintenance. Sugarcane requires very minimum maintenance. So right now, if somebody have money and they want to go to Liberia to cultivate sugarcane for sugar production, that you can start with the soil in Liberia as it is. Maybe what you would need will be fertilizer. And the thing about sugarcane is if you lay out your field properly and you plant your sugarcane, it's 5 to 7 years of continual production before you can remove that crop to regrow it again or to plant a different crop. So sugarcane will bring money and it will do well on most of our upland soil in Liberia. And then maybe by the time after the 7-year period, then that's when probably your pH will have gone down a little bit, maybe from 5.5 to 5 or 4.8. Then that time you must have saved, because you will have the idea to do that, you must have saved to be able to buy agricultural lime. There are different kind of lime, there are gypsum, there are other different kind of lime that you can use to increase the soil pH. So during that time now, when you till your soil, hopefully you'll be able to get some machine, you till your soil and put some lime and bring that pH back up. And then you can be able to grow other crop again. And then banana or planting. Our people are growing banana and planting with no import. In Liberia, they're not putting any fertilizer, they're not putting any lime, and those crops are doing okay. So those are crops that you can start with, like I said, we can start with the soil as it is right now. And then over the year, you can be able to save money to be able to buy the inputs to correct your soil, chemical thing, and then you can be able to grow crop on a prolonged basis. Pineapple, beans, soybeans is a very good crop. I always say it has the ability to convert atmospheric nitrogen into plant available form, and then it can enrich your soil. So our soil is low in nitrogen. So if you grow in soybean, like if you do a crop rotation, like you have another crop or 2 or 3 crops, and you rotate them with soybean in your field. So let's say you grow some crop, and then after that crop you grow soybean. That beans will put some nitrogen. So after that bean, maybe the only fertilizer you will need to buy will be maybe potassium and phosphorus, because our soils are very low. Liberian soils are very low in phosphorus and potassium because of the acidic and the high rate of water infiltration I discussed earlier. So you'll be able to buy those. So beans will be a very good crop to grow in Liberia. And of course, we'll have our what we call cash crop, there, rubber, cocoa, coffee, and other crops we do pretty well in Liberia if you do proper management.
Now you talk about beans I was thinking about, now it's on the list, so I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Beans. What's about edibles and pepper?
Yeah, of course. We grow a lot of pepper in Liberia. So those will do very well. Again, like I said, those are crops that you can start with our soil as they are right now, and then over the year, when you monitor your soil system, you see that something is going wrong, then you have to adjust it. But the way our soil are now in Liberia, you can go and strictly start with pepper. Edibles, cassava, those are growing there. They are doing well. And then if we do proper management, we can be able to even grow more, because those are almost like native crops in Liberia, and they will grow with the natural or inherent fertility of the Liberian soil. And so with the level of production we have without any input, you can imagine what will happen if you start to put some input. Your yield will even increase per unit area, which you consider productivity. So those and all can work there.
So we keep talking about the nutrients, the different nutrients that you are calling in the soil. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether there has been any research done as to what Liberians don't have in their diet, or what kind of sickness or what health issue we are having as a result of what is really in our soil. Is there anything along those lines to say, well, we lack this, and so people in this area are getting this deficiency in this mineral, in this nutrient, or in this vitamin, or something like that?
Yeah, so there are couples of Liberian paper I've read, but those guys who wrote the paper, they are from a chemistry background. So they were not, their paper was not actually looking at nutrient deficiency in soil. They were looking at different elements. Like around Monrovia, this is not agriculture now. This is some environmental thing. So around Monrovia, people eat a lot of potter, what we call potter, the white clay.
Yeah.
And those minerals are those material, they are mined from areas where, like around the battery factory area, where people do all kind of things and they are not properly disposing, those industrial wastes, and people are mining potter and eating it. So they are concerned that people could get poisoning, like from different, elements like lead, arsenic, cadmium, those heavy metals. So the concerns are there. But when it comes to nutrient deficiency in soil, relating that to human health in Liberia, I haven't read any research paper from Liberia looking at that particular problem. And that's something that somebody could look at. Yeah, but if we have the plant nutrient problem in the soil, it doesn't have like a strict direct impact on human health. It's going to have a direct impact on crop production, because if you don't have the nutrient there for the plant to grow, the plant will not just grow, or they will not just produce how much you eat. So it has a different connotation when we look at it that way. But recently, scientists in Japan, India, China, and even here in the US, they are trying to look at this thing they call, rice fortification. And what that is, iron is one important element in our body. It's very important for the production of red blood cell. And that's something that a lot of people, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, suffer because of poor nutrition. So what people are trying to do now, what scientists are doing now, is they are researching a way that they can fortify the rice. They can make the rice to take more iron, good iron, that when people eat those rice, because we eat a lot of rice in Africa, it's our main source of calories. So if that rice have enough iron in it and people are consuming it, especially children, then they will be able to produce more red blood cell to sustain themselves. So people are looking at that kind of research, around the world right now. But in Liberia, I don't think there's something like that going
on. Soklote is asking, I know we talked about rice earlier, he's asking, is rice really suitable for Liberian soil? If yes, what region? And let's talk more about rice, because that's what we eat a lot, and that's what we have been fighting to grow over the years.
Yeah.
So let's speak to rice, and part of that question I want to add is growing rice all that important, or we can grow something else and buy rice from wherever we want?
Well, the first thing is we can grow something else, bring more money into the country, and buy all the rice that we want to eat. But to answer second question, yes, Liberia is conducive for growing rice, because we have all the environmental factors that contribute to better rice production. And then, like I said earlier, we have a lot of lowland area in Liberia where we can grow rice. The challenge is that the lowlands are not being properly managed. And if you don't do proper land management, you can't be able to grow that much rice. That's just the truth. But Liberia, the total wetland area in Liberia is over 6 million acre when you put them together. That's a lot of land area. Louisiana here is the third largest producer of rice in the United States. And guess how much acre they are cultivating? Between 400,000 to 500,000 acres.
Oh, no. Say that again. In Liberia, the lowland, the place was supposed to be growing rice. You have 6 million acres if you put everything together.
If you put everything together, if you put all the lowland from around the country, you put everything together, there's more than 6 million acres that we can grow rice. But we need to do proper management of these lowlands for them to be conducive to grow rice. Like earlier, we talked about iron toxicity problem. You can't have this issue and you say you will grow rice, a commercial grade rice. Because if you're growing rice that is not meeting certain standard, people who are importing rice, those rice will compete with you on the Liberian market. And if your rice don't meet those standards, you will have definitely a problem. That's how people get discouraged from going into this kind of production area. So it will need proper management, and that would do a lot with the soil. How are we manipulating this soil chemically to make sure it is suitable to provide the kind of nutrient and the level of yield that we expect to have, so that our production can be profitable, that we can be able to import to compete with the rice importers. So yeah, we have the capacity to grow rice in Liberia. We just need the technical know-how, the technicians who know how to identify and solve the problem, and then rice we can grow. I mean, if the resources are there and people are there to be able to go into rice production, we can produce enough rice in Liberia, and we can flood the Liberian market with rice and even be able to sell to other countries. But we have to put in the rightful mechanism.
Right. You say, well, for the 6 million, I'm interested in the 6 million lowland now.
Yeah.
You say what we need is proper management.
Yeah.
What is that, and what all is required for us to grow? Because if we can grow on this 6 million acres, we can feed the whole of Liberia, feed Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Ivory Coast.
That's true. That's
So
true.
what is required? Proper management. What is that proper management?
Water.
Okay.
Most of these lowland I'm telling you about, the water, the inflow and outflow of water is not controlled. So if we can manage the water, we can control how much water is coming in and how much water is going out. There's no way we can be able to grow rice, because if rice need water, and then there are times that the field, you have to keep the field flooded, and there are times that you have to let the water out. So if you don't have the proper engineering set in place to lay this farm out, to lay this field out and to expand, because like some of these areas in this lowland area, when you go, even the people that are farming there, they are only able to farm maybe along the little creek that is in that swamp. They just brush along that little creek, and that's where they plant their rice. And that is because they don't have machine to be able to expand those swamps. If you see a 5 to 6 acre swamp in Liberia, those swamps actually have the potential to be expanded to 25, 30, 50 acres if you have the machine to be able to push, those big trees back and open the area. So we need swamp expansion of this swamp land, and we can be able to lay them out properly and grow rice there. So we can do that. And then of course we will need proper nutrient management, and then we will need to check our soil system to make sure the pH is correct. So it will need some input. But initially, we will need to first control the inflow of water. There's no proper water management. Most of this land I'm talking about in Liberia, they are not developed. Less than 10% of that lowland in Liberia, that amount of land across 6 million acres, less than 10% of that is developed. And even after 10%, maybe just 2% of that 10% is on maybe some good management, where people have actually laid out and they are trying to do some proper rice production in those places. So very small amount of that amount of land that we have is on a proper rice production. But yes, we have the resources, the land resource we have to grow rice. We just now need to put the human and other capital resources to be able to make that to work.
And you can actually create your own swamp, right? Just bring in water and make the place wet.
Yes, exactly. You can do that. Like I said, that would be like expansion. So because our land, most of it is elevated. So to be able to pump water and create your own swamp on an elevated land, it would take a lot of technology and input. But those swamp land are already there. You can actually expand them. You can expand them and make them bigger. All the lands that are surrounding the swamp, you can bridge. Like one of our brother, Armstrong Java, he's doing some rice project in Liberia. Yeah. And I like the project he's undertaking. Is a really good project. But most of the time when I see some of the pictures that he posts, and then when I see the rice, because they are just following this water line, because that's all they can do. They don't have the machine to be able to push the land back to expand his swamp. But some of those swamps that he's cultivating over there, if you have the machine, you can actually make them very big. You can easily turn them with machine. You can easily turn them into several hundred or thousand acre rice field with proper management. So that's all we need.
Good. Yeah. Now, I know next week we're going to talk about animal husbandry, but as we talk about soil, our concentration is on the crops. Is soil important to your animal production or raising animals?
It is, just like all of us. It is, because first of all, if you talk about raising animals, the animal will have to eat to produce. So you have to have a good soil to grow good crops, and then the nutrition of the animals actually depend on the nutrition of the crop, and that will depend on the nutrient availability in the soil. Animal can suffer a lot of nutrient deficiency when they are growing. So if you don't have proper nutrient in the feed that you are feeding your animals, they will not perform well. And one nutrient that is actually a problem, like especially in cattle production, will be magnesium. If your feed, like whatever you are feeding your cattle, if it's low in magnesium, your animal will suffer from a condition called hypomagnesia, and it's a very serious condition. They will not grow properly. Pigs, when you grow piglets, the young pigs, they are normally born with anemia, and that's iron deficiency. So if their feed don't have enough iron, they will not grow well. They will not grow to the body weight that you want them to grow to be able to make profit for them. So all of that, animal production, human health, and everything is tied right back to the soil. And I can tell people there was a reason why God made us out of the dust of the soil, because that's what we are. That's exactly what we are. All the elements that are in the soil, they are in our body, and they have to exist in the right proportion for our crop to do well so that we can eat it and also be healthy.
Whoa, there's a lot to chew on. Next week, we're going to be discussing everything about animals, growing animals, and all that. But Dr. Pei, we have touched on a lot of things we can never really exhaust, because agriculture, that's where we were born on the farm. We eat, they say you are what you eat.
Exactly.
So let's wrap this up. Anything that we don't touch on soil fertility, soil science, Liberian soil that you want to end with, so that we can wrap this up?
Well, I think I've touched most of the things that ordinary people will want to know about Liberian soil. We didn't go deep into the science of that because I don't think that's what the program is about. We just want to give people the idea of what is there, and then try to answer some of those questions that are around the corner that people say every time. And I think with the questions coming in from you and from the listener, I think we exhaust most of the things that we needed to learn, like I said, for the ordinary Liberian farmers. So what I will want to add is what we need in Liberia is proper soil management. Our soils, people should not be going around and say our soil are fertile. If you put your finger in the soil, if it germinate, those fingers will not grow into arms or into hands. And you have to know why it's not happening like that, because if you just have fingers and you don't have arm, how will you use the fingers? So we need to be able to grow good amount of crop, and that all depends on the level of fertility of our soil. So you can't just say your soil is fertile. If you tell somebody that, you have to be able to show them proof. You have to be able to show them something that make you to say, oh, yes, this is based on this and this and this. That's why I say the soil is fertile. So to answer the big question out there, Liberian soil fertile, like I said earlier, most of our soil are what we call laterite soil. They are not fertile, or they are not to the level of fertility for good crop or optimal crop production. So we need inputs, and then those inputs, we need to use them properly so that we don't run into the problem that Dennis asked the first person who takes that question that they asked, so that we don't run into kind of problem. So we need proper land management. And with rice production, yes, we have the land. We just need the technology and the capital to be able to go into proper rice production. And yeah, I'm also available. You can find me on the internet. You can email me if you have questions. I'm on Facebook. You can send me a friend request. You can send me your question if you have any question after this show. I also know that this show is being broadcasted in rural Liberia. Probably some people will not be able to listen to the show tonight, so you might listen to a repeat broadcast on one of the local radio stations in Liberia. If you have a question, you can just message me on Messenger, and I might be able to answer your question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pei.
Thank you.
Still, people are coming. Still questions. We want to end here, but the people are interested, so let me do this.
Yeah.
Thomas Abanga said Liberia needs proper land development, land preparation, as well as suitable agricultural mechanization system. So Clotaire said you talked about two breeds of rice. Are they locally produced rice or imported? Jimmy Eastburn, would Dr. Pay like to speak to the comparative advantage or disadvantage that Liberia faces? There are studies that show as much as 70% of labor in agriculture, or the industry yield is low as 5% to GDP. You know, Jimmy always like to come late, then he asks big question. So, so Dr. Pay, just 2 minutes to respond to the last things that we just, the last comments, and then we can
Okay,
close.
so to the first question, Liberia need land development of the lowland. We emphasize on that throughout, and I give a lot of clarification on how we can go about doing that. So that question will already answer. The next question, what was it? Can you just run through
Two
them?
breeds
Can
of
I answer?
rice.
Yeah, the two varieties, Swakoko 8. Swakoko is Liberian name. It's called Swakoko because it was developed right there in the district of Swakoko in Cari, and it's called Swakoko 8. For probably they have several variants of the Swakoko, and that particular one is number 8. So, and then Lot 23 is also a local Liberian rice. It's there. People are growing it right there in Liberia. So those are local Liberian varieties. I'm not telling you about any international or commercial hybrid varieties. Those are all local Liberian rice that are tolerant to iron toxicity in our growing system. And the next question, what was that?
It says 70% of the labor in agriculture, but the industrial use is as low as 5% to GDP. So
Yeah,
the big economic question is a comparative advantage or disadvantage.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to go into his comparatives and comparative and disadvantage and whatever he called him. But yeah, 70% of the labor force is in agriculture, and that's because most of them they are just doing small farming. They don't have anything else to do. So they go into farming and that becomes a source of employment for them. And because they don't have machines, they are still farming with cutlasses and hoes, bent cutlasses and hoes that were made on the blacksmith kitchen. You know, I'm not trying to denigrate the tools. They are what our people have been using for years and they have been surviving. Also, the tools have been very, good for sustaining Liberia, but we need to move. We need to gradually try to send some of those into the museum and start moving towards power tiller. Instead of using axes to fell our tree, we need to start using, tractors to be able to uproot the trees completely and clear the farm. Because even the farm area, if you just calculate, if you had the time and resources to go and calculate the area of each tree stump and each big log that is falling on the farm where a crop will not grow, you have good percentage of the land area on the farm covered already by things that are just impeding the production process. So those things, the land need proper clearing, and the people will need machines to do that. So even though we have more people working in agriculture, but this many people are just cultivating very small area, and that's the reason why we can produce that much.
Next week, we're going to go into animals husbandry, and we'll be going to be talking about poultry farming, cattle and small ruminants, swine or pig production, and fishery. I had a man in my hometown, he used to use that as cause when he says swine you. So anytime I look at swine, I think of course word. So that's why. So please come up next week and share the video to those who, this video is going to be uploaded on YouTube, so that share it and know that Liberia, what our agricultural problems are, what the needs are, what are the things that we have, what are the things that we don't have, and what we can do to improve our soil to make it fertile or more fertile for the production of the crops that we have. Dr. Pei, thank you so much. Your closing comments, and we'll be calling it a good night.
Well, thank you again for having me here to share my little idea. Like I said, I'm always available when you call upon me when it comes to the science of agriculture in Liberia. I think I have little information to share, and I'm always willing to share that. And I'm happy to be here again. Thanks to all of our viewers and listeners. Thanks for taking the time, almost an hour and a half to listen to what I had to say. I appreciate you for that. And I look forward to seeing you next week to talk about the animal production potential of Liberia and what we can do to be able to produce enough animal produce so that we stop importing chicken feed. Come on, we can't be having Liberia, that sweet land of liberty, with a whole lot of land, and be importing chicken feed. At least we should be able to produce the chicken in Liberia, export the chicken breast, and then eat the chicken feed.
Yeah.
Instead of importing it, we can grow pig. Instead of importing pig feed, we can grow the pig, eat the feed, and then export the pig belly and all the other part of the pig.
Yeah. So
We don't have to be waiting for cow to come from Malay or Guinea before we eat. In Liberia, when somebody eating cow meat, it mean they're rich.
Yeah.
The cow meat is scarce. We can grow cow right in Liberia and eat cow meat. Eggs. So I will be discussing some of the challenges that are there and some of the progress that have been made there. And what we can do. To produce enough animals in Liberia that we can be able to produce enough food for ourselves. We have the potential. We just need to put it to work. So next week, I will be looking forward to seeing all of you again. And I really appreciate your time. To all of you who were able to text in your questions, thank you. Those questions, some of them we answered easily, some of them were a little challenging, but that's all the discussion is about. If I didn't answer your question correctly, it might have been an oversight. You can definitely contact me on whatever social media you are on, and we can talk this thing. I like debates, intellectual, scientific debate, because that way we solve problem. I don't like noise. I like when we talk. At the end of the day, we should walk away with something that we can apply. We should learn something. So we come here to impact knowledge and also to learn. So those of you who ask your questions, I learned from you too. You might have got some information from me today that you already knew and that you didn't know. And that's all this program is about. And I'm very happy to be here, and I'm always willing and available whenever I'm called to come here to be able to share my expertise. And I thank you very much. You guys are the Focus on Liberia area there. Thank you all for identifying me, first of all, in the first place, and bringing me here. For people to see, other than that, I would just be here in my corner and doing my thing and publishing my paper, and nobody would know me. But at least Liberians are knowing that there's somebody here that know a little thing about soil. I can share some of his ideas. So thank you so much.
We appreciate it, Dr. Pip, your willingness, your busy man, you willing to come here and talk. And what I want to grow the animals. I told you about my beans. The next one, when we come to animals, I will tell you.
Okay.
I want to grow snails, but let's keep that for next week.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. I mean, I'm a soil scientist, but first of all, before I begin a soil scientist, I'm an agriculturalist. I studied general agriculture at the University of Liberia, so I studied animal science quite substantially. So I have some information that I can share, so we can talk about all of that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I want to thank our viewers. Thomas Abanga said you need additional contributor. Thomas, please reach out to us if you have your expertise in anything agriculture. But we want to continue on this. I want to call Dr. Pay back at some point. Also, if you have other ideas or other specialization in agriculture, like agroeconomists, please come and let's discuss how we can, because agriculture is so broad. I mean, when I was going through the different specialties, over 20, I said, wow, when are we? And you can't get one person to be able to discuss also. If there are others out there, Dr. Pip, even after the show, comments continue on Facebook. And even when the show is on YouTube, they still have comments. So anytime in your spare time, you can go and read some of the comments and see if you can
respond. Yeah, I'll do that.
On behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, I want to say thank you very much, Dr. Pei. Thanks to our viewers and those who will even watch later. We say thank you. Liberia is the only country we have. So anything we have, sometimes people say, oh, they just talk. Yes, everything starts with talk. Even the Bible say, how can they do anything if they don't hear? And so exactly. the only thing we can do is to first talk so that people hear it. That's knowledge, that's education, that's information.
Yeah.
So please use this information. If you are in Liberia, and sometimes the few times you have, I know data business is hard, but try to look us up on YouTube and see if you can learn something, especially this one, learn something and see how you can make a contribution to our dear country. Until then, from all of us here at Focus on Liberia, we say thanks so much for watching. Good night and God bless you. We're going to end with our song, We Are All Liberians. That's the song we want to remind all of us that in spite of our differences, we are all Liberians. I learned tonight that even the plants are smarter than us. We think we all died, eh?
Yeah.
But even with that, we are all Liberians. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. God bless. Keep your dial focused on Liberia, and see you later.
Thank you.
We are Liberian. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.